WC Turck for Revolution and Beer at revolutionandbeer.com on the road. This time we're in Washington, D.C. on a very, very hot day. I was just down in front of the White House here, which is actually just over my shoulder here, behind the trees and through layers and layers of security. But I was just over here in front of the White House where most of the tourists go, which is very funny. I haven't seen that many people gathered on a sidewalk in front of a house since I was at Elvis's house in down in Memphis. I ran into a couple of folks with signs in support of Egypt. A kid named Muhammad and a young lady that are out here hoping to get President Obama's attention, hoping to get the world's attention for what's going on in Egypt. I thought that was very apt. I was wondering how I was going to begin this post because I'm in Washington today, not about a gun issue, even though that there's an aspect to it, but more about apathy and public involvement in their government. Tomorrow I'm going to be standing on the Memorial Bridge facing a gentleman who I've sort of had a little bit of an internet, an email, and Facebook feud with. Sort of one-sided. He's dodging me because I think he knows he's wrong. But Adam Kokesh has vowed to march across the Memorial Bridge here in Washington, about a mile from where I'm standing, with supporters of what he calls the Second American Revolution. And revolutions are fine. We're Revolution and Beer. But there's constructive revolutions and there's destructive revolutions. What we saw in Egypt last year and the year before, what started all across the Middle East, really began as constructive revolutions. Obviously, the crackdowns by the military and the police and the ruling parties made a shambles of that. But the people were adamant. The people were out in force. And by and large, they were very peaceful. 33 million people showed up to protest the other night the failing government, in my opinion, the Morsi government in Egypt. That's a mandate. The military has vowed to intervene. It seems that they want Morsi gone as well. He's vowed, at least for today, that he will defend his right to remain president, remain the elected president, and the Islamist president with the Islamist constitution for as long as he's alive. There's a couple of things there that are very important. One is the Islamist constitution. Every time they form a new government in Egypt, and in many places around the world, what happens is they form a new constitution. There's nothing that's set in place that's eternal, or as eternal as we can create here on this earth, for the continuance of a government, for the continuance of governance, for a guideline for governance. That's very important. Because often we've heard quoted here in this country, and the person I will be protesting against tomorrow, Adam Kokesh, has said, a lot of people abuse this quote by Thomas Jefferson, that every generation needs a revolution. And that's true. But again, what kind of revolution? A very big part of my contention with Mr. Kokesh and his friends who want to march across the Memorial Street Bridge with guns strung across their back in some cartoonish sort of way of taking agency in their government, is that they haven't taken agency in their government for a very long time. They haven't paid attention. They were satisfied to be entertained into oblivion And then, when something hits them in the face, they want to turn on the government. They want to tear it all down. When the fault lies with them, the fault lies with us. I'm not going to pass blame strictly on them. It lies with all of us. It's our general apathy, American apathy, towards agency in your government, towards sustained interest and action to make sure that this government represents you the way you expect it to represent you, the way you hope it represents you. Took a lot of notes here on the plane coming in. It was raining most of the morning, and it turned out to be a beautiful day, albeit very hot. you can tell here. I could, if I had a makeup person and a crew, I would be getting a touch-up right now. I wanted to talk about the Bill of Rights. I wanted to talk about the Constitution and its promise, but also its contradiction. The American Constitution is very contradictory. On one hand, the opening of the Bill of Rights, or the opening of the Constitution, the preamble, basically negates, or could negate, all of the civil rights. Provide for the common good. That's a very broad statement. It's a statement that is wrought or imperiled with all kinds of abuse in its interpretation. The common good you can interpret many, many different ways. What's good for me is not good for you. What's good for one group is maybe not necessarily good for another group. What represents the good of one group or one constituency of this country maybe isn't good or doesn't represent other constituencies. But there's something else in that preamble that's essential. And it's essential to this argument. It's essential to what I'll be doing on that bridge tomorrow morning. It's essential to the misunderstanding, the fundamental misunderstanding that men like Adam Kokesh and others have about this country. The Constitution begins with "we the people." We the people. Because the government is us. Now what's happened is, historically, looking back at voter turnout for the last, say, almost a full century, that the voting record in this country is abysmal. The last election, 2012, 43% of eligible voters did not vote. Just didn't turn out. Pundits make all kinds of excuses for that. I won't. I voted. I've voted every election I've been able to. And I vote my conscience. I don't just vote party. I don't vote based upon what way the wind is blowing politically. I vote my conscience. This year, I happen to vote green because I thought it was necessary to make a statement about choice in this country. And I like Jill Scott a lot. I thought it was brave of her to be arrested for something that she believed in amid a presidential race. But again, going back to the Constitution, the key there is we the people, because we are the government. But we've been so apathetic. Some of us just turn out to vote without really understanding what we're voting about or who we're voting for. And that's dangerous as well, because then it becomes a popularity contest. It doesn't become a statement of our responsibility, a statement of an indication of our weight in this argument, and how the vote, and how a massive vote can change that argument, make it or break it. We the people. We haven't lost our country, as some people would say. If anything, we've given it away. We've let it go. We've been lazy about it. And this knee-jerk reaction of, well, let's burn it all down, brings us right back to Egypt and some of these other governments, in which every time the government changes, there's a new constitution, a new flavor of the month, so to speak, or season, or year. We have something in this country. It's not perfect. Brian and I, with Revolution and Beer, along with many, many others in Chicago and across the country and around the world, want this country to be better. We don't hate the country. We want it to be better. And so we work on the things that need fixing. The things that don't need fixing, don't need fixing. But there are things that need to be fixed. But that's where we come in, because we're the only ones who can fix them. And burning it all down to start over just creates eternal chaos. Because that sort of knee-jerk reaction, that sort of apathetic, short-sighted, short-termed, immature, anti-progressive ideology or thought is going to run afoul of the next group that comes along, and the next, and the next, and the next. You want a better country? You got to build something. You have to build on something. And the Constitution, though perhaps flawed, as any human document is a pretty damn good start. Brian and I are working on a book called Tomfoolery. Sort of riffs and rants on what we talk about with Revolution and Beer. In the book, we end with Activist Nation. Because it's activists. Not violence, not people who have these knee-jerk reactions to these events and create more chaos. It's activists, it's peaceful activists who have changed this country. The right to vote, the end of slavery, civil rights, women's rights, gay marriage, all of these things that broaden the scope of the Constitution to encompass the maximum number of people in this country for the maximum amount of liberty. That was done by activists. That was done peacefully by activists. That was done by people who have agency in their government and a sustained and impassioned interest. I'm going to take you around Washington today and tomorrow before I go home. You'll see the protest tomorrow. Take you to some other sites and we'll talk about a few other things. But I wanted to start that off with we the people and how we're the answer. For Revolution and Beer, WC Turck. More later.